Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Anchor Watch. I'm your host, Bobby Jones. Once again, it's an honor and pleasure to be here. So, if you looked at our marquee, my good friend Dan Barkoff and I had an interview I did and conducted with him. We've had some audio issues, so we're going to fix that and post it separately. But make no mistake, we will. You will still get to hear Dan and I's thoughts on basically where we see national security 1 year ago compared to 1 year ago today. It's very interesting. Some of the observations I think we both came up with. With that being said, I'd like to bring in our executive producer extraordinaire, Sam, uh, because once again, it seems like every week we get on here, Sam, and there's something different to talk about. Um, it's quite amazing, to be honest with you, if I'm being completely honest.
Well, the thing that always amazes me is that there's so much domestic shit going on, Bobby.
Yeah.
But yet we lose sight of the international stuff and the military stuff, and also everything seems like it's converging. So
Yes,
your world is colliding with the domestic civilian world in a
it
way
is.
that's really frightening.
It's frightening because it's unprecedented. Because you have to understand something. Those who are watching, America was set up to separate those two major factions of the nation state. America was unique when it was founded because we decided not to have a regent or some royal person sit on a throne, and we wanted to give civilian control to the military. I mean, if you look at the times of when the Revolutionary War occurred, this was not the norm. Heck, right after the revolution, Napoleon comes to power in France, combining emperor, military leader, and government. I mean, that's amazing when you think about what we did. But now, for the first time in our history, we have the deliberate integration of those aspects, Sam. And there are some consequences because of it, and we're starting to see it. But I think we completely underestimate the severity of it. Do you know what I mean by that?
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. I think we were talking in the green room tonight. We want to talk about the shutdown. We're because it's hitting armed services sort of more deeply than we thought. I want to talk about the young Republican committee, and I want to get your thoughts on Gaza. But let's start with the shutdown.
Yeah. So this shutdown, the government shutdown, has been something where now, and I think people are starting to understand, we need to dig in because this is going to last a while. So to handicap what's happening here for people who may not understand why this, that, and the other. The federal government passes a budget every year to operate. It is deliberate. It starts in the House debate. It goes to the Senate. Then once both sides say what they want, they have a committee. They combine all the wants and desires. They agree. They vote on it. It gets sent to the president. The president signs the budget, and that is what you have for the next fiscal year. That is normal operation. What we have now, nothing has really changed as the process. It's just the players in the process. Understand, when you are the political party out of our two major parties that have control of the White House, which is the executive branch, the Congress, which is the legislative branch, and you have an undeniable majority on the Supreme Court, the judicial branch, passing the budget should be very easy. It should be very simple. It should be something that literally is like a hot knife through butter. However, the Republican Party does not have a supermajority in either chamber of Congress. They need to have some sort of bipartisan support. Now, here's why there's a shutdown. There are not enough Democrats who are willing to vote for what the Republicans want. The budget that the Republicans are proposing, in part, is to make up for the tax windfall that the top 1% got in the big, beautiful budget or bill or whatever the heck they called it. That windfall means and meant the elimination of healthcare protections for the majority of Americans. The Democrats, who, When they had all that kind of power, they passed the Affordable Care Act, aka Obamacare, where a lot of people, for the first time in their lives, got on health care. Those have been rolled back with the one big beautiful bill, or whatever they want to call it. So because of that, we are now looking at the Democrats holding the line saying, hey, you guys are in charge, but we're not voting for a damn thing until those healthcare protections come back. We are already seeing people getting kicked off of healthcare. Marjorie Taylor Greene, one of the reddest of red Trump supporters in the northwestern portion of Georgia, my home state, has gone on record saying this is insane. They need to fix it. Why? Because she has a 22, 26, I want to say 28-year-old kids that cannot afford healthcare. They have been aged out of Obamacare and cannot afford healthcare. Straight up. And the people in her region, which is Dalton, Ringgold, North Georgia, carpet country, as we call it, because a lot of carpet that's in your house comes from there, are struggling. I drive through there on a regular basis. They are struggling. I've seen homeless people walking the streets up there. It's bad. And she knows it. And so she has broke from the Republican Party and Trump to the point where Trump is questioning what's going on with her, as she's questioning a lot more of the stuff because she's seeing the reality in her own home and in her own district. Now, I know what you guys are going to say. Yeah, it only matters when it happens to them. I agree. However, I'm not going to throw the baby out with the bathwater. They recognize that this is untenable. And so Mike Johnson, in typical Mike Johnson, Speaker of the House, I want all the power, but none of the responsibility mentality, has purposely kept the House of Representatives adjourned. They are not in session. They're about to be in session because they got no choice. And what's going to happen is the Democrat that won her special election is going to be seated, and there will be 218 votes now that will vote to release all the Epstein files and to proactively debate the budget. This is going to be fascinating because the reality of Republican politics under Donald Trump have now hit the American people. That's what's happened. And so to handicap all of this shutdown, hey, if the Democrats cave, Mike Johnson says, then we'll talk about all that stuff. And Hakeem Jeffries and the Democrats are like, oh, no, because we've played this game before and you don't do anything. So they know that the shutdown is on Donald Trump and the Republican Congress. They know that. And so they're like, we're willing to sit here until we can get healthcare and healthcare access back to millions of Americans who have already started writing their congressmen and congresswomen telling them, I can't afford medication. I can't go to the doctor. That's what this is about. Now, let me pause there. Any questions on that, Sam, before I move into what's happening now with this?
No, keep going. I have a couple of things to say about Marjorie Taylor Greene, but keep going because I'm loving it.
So I'm seeing people in the comments now saying they have Medicaid and they may die when these cuts go through. You're absolutely right. You are at risk. I hope and pray that you don't, but you are at greater risk because of this. Now, all of that being said, the voting itself, the debates, all that's one thing, but the ramifications of what's happening right now. We have active duty military who may not get paid tomorrow. Trump told Pete Hegseth to magically find money to pay the military and budget money that's already been appropriated for other things. But here's the thing. We have military families in line at food pantries because they can't afford food. They can't. They don't know if they're even going to be paid here next week, this week. Unbelievable. To show you the dastardly level here. In the past, when we had shutdowns, they had these little addendums that allowed Department of Defense, the military active duty to be paid because they did not want the nation to fall apart. And they had little cutouts for air traffic controllers and stuff like that. Right now, we have air traffic controllers who are forced to man their stations at a reduced capacity. There are about 50,000 air traffic controllers, and there are about 13,000 that are working, from what last I saw, working for free, working without pay. Trump is already going on record saying, hey, we may not give you your back pay like has happened at every other government shutdown in American history. So they don't want to pay people to work. They're forcing people to work. And now your military may actually not get paid. Okay. Now, I'm sure they will figure out a way for that to happen. in the next 28 to 48 hours. They're not stupid. At least I hope not. But
Well,
but the fact that we have military members having to go to food pantries. I mean, heck, we even have some of them. We've always had some that were on assisted food programs like WIC and stuff like that, which I've always thought was ridiculous. But the fact that now they're going to food pantries, and I saw clips of them in line in uniform as families because of this government shutdown. Ridiculous. It's ridiculous. The man goes and uses the military as political backdrop for his speeches, and then here we are looking at these things right now. I just, at some point, something's going to give. At some point.
Well, and I think, back to Marjorie Taylor Greene, and as Patrick in the audience knows, we're no fans of Marjorie Taylor Greene. Susan and I had a really good conversation earlier this week with Ryan Wiggins from the Lincoln Project. And she was like, look, Marjorie Taylor Greene's a Southern woman. And you don't mess with a Southern woman, right? And Mike Johnson is out here saying, well, Marjorie Taylor Greene, she probably just hasn't read up on all the, on everything. So she doesn't really know what she's talking about. The thing is, she may be right about that in regards to a lot of things, space lasers and George Soros and all of that kind of stuff with Marjorie Taylor Greene. However, she does know that there's an opening because you have to provide for your constituents at some point, right? That's got to happen. And it's not just that they're not providing for constituents, they're taking away from constituents. And so, I wonder what you think about this. If this, the Republicans are so inept and short-sighted, do you feel like there will be a time when the sort of internecine, their internal battles with each other will lead to some sort of downfall? Or do you think it's just
I think we're in the beginning stages of that, to be honest with you. Because here's a couple of things. Number one, despite what President Trump says, he is going to be a 2-term president. He is in the middle of his 2nd term. That is it. If for no other reason, there are other MAGA members, Republicans who want to take his place. They believe it's their time. They don't believe he's going to, forget health, forget that. Just a political animal will not allow him to stand for a 3rd term. Period, let alone the Constitution. That being said, there are people who are looking beyond Trump. Marjorie Taylor Greene is one of them. She is a political animal. Here's the thing, though. Her political shift that we've seen, say, in the last 2-3 months are buttressed by the fact that when she goes home, she sees people, to include her own kids, struggling. Right. That's a stark reality. No matter how jaded we may get with politicians and this, that, and the other, it's something when you go home to the district that you were raised in and you see people that you personally know struggling. And now you have a decision to make. Now, that does not mean that she is going to be every liberal or every leftist or whoever best friend, but there is an acknowledgement of what's happening. She is not the only one. I've seen other members of Republicans who are sitting there saying, what are we doing? Especially when it comes to the Epstein files. So there are just certain things that their logic will not allow them to discount. So if you take all of that into account, right, they have a choice to make. Either they acknowledge reality or they hope and pray that this fever that has gripped the country for a decade stays. It's not staying. And when you sit there, and I have friends who have texted me literally while we've been on the air, Sam, saying they have no money that is coming to them for payday as a military member. They check their accounts. It's empty. And when this has happened in the past, banks like USAA and maybe Federal has fronted that money knowing it's going to come back. They're not doing it from what I see this time around, because they don't know how long this is going to last. When Mike Johnson made the statement that this could be the longest government shutdown in American history, that pushes people away who want to float military members. But it's not just military members. I got friends that work at the CDC. I got friends that work in various parts of vital positions in the government, careerists. and they don't know if they're going to get paid. They don't. And here's the thing with the shutdown, ladies and gentlemen, if they're on furlough, which they all are, they are not allowed to seek other employment according to the law. So
Wow.
they're held hostage by this. And both sides know this. The basic function of government is not happening because you have a budget that is completely out of whack with any American poll that you see. This is what's fascinating. They have the data that shows Americans do not agree with the erosion of healthcare and the escalation of cost of living. Those are the two major things that bill that they passed earlier is going to do. The Democrats are trying to get a redo or some type of way to soften the blow that's already coming. There are rural hospitals that have already started to shut down. They have made announcements.
True.
What's amazing to me about this, Sam, is the states that are hardest hit by this are the states that voted in earnest for Donald Trump to return to the White House.
This is, the old Republican, pull yourself up by your bootstrap
Right.
on crack. I mean, it is, it defies reason and rationality, right? There's and regarding the military paychecks, if banks aren't going to honor or advance anyone money because they know that this administration isn't operating in good faith, right? Trump doesn't do anything in good faith. He can do whatever he wants anytime. And the bottom line is always that somebody is going to get paid, and it's always going to be the banks, right? Banks are going to get their nut first. And so if that means that our servicemen and women have to suck up the shutdown on our behalf, that's another sacrifice that we're asking them to make on our behalf, and it's effed up.
It's and I'm using the service members active duty because I'm most familiar with them. But make no mistake, I don't look. I feel bad for anybody that works for the federal government, the TSA agents that you see at the airport, not getting paid, working.
Right.
To do so for free. How many of y'all would work your jobs for free? And we ain't talking about glamorous jobs either. We're talking about essential jobs. I find it very interesting that when President Trump made his comments about it, he doubles down and says, hey, he could fire all these people too. Through RIF, reduction in force is what it's called.
Right.
And here's the thing. If you look at Project 2025, this is exactly what they wanted to play out. The hollowing out of the administrative state within the federal government. That's what they wanted. Trump is doing it, and he's doing it under the pretense of cost and then political power. What Trump and everybody else does not maybe think about or realize, or maybe he does, he just doesn't care because it doesn't affect him, is these people, as I said, the red states are affected. I'm talking about red state dependency too on government services, not just they are employed by the federal government like Redstone Arsenal in Alabama, Huntsville, Alabama, which basically is the single employer of everybody in that area. I'm talking about all of the things such as FEMA when things happen, all of that. This directly affects those states more than anywhere else. And for all of us to sit here and say this is acceptable, or this is how politics is going, or it's okay to use the active duty military as political pawns is ridiculous. It's ridiculous, Sam. So that's kind of where my head is with this shutdown. We don't see an end in sight because the party that's in control, the one that complains when they're not in power and then sucks when they're in power because they don't know how to govern and negotiate. Here we are.
The Republicans, I a couple of points here, but the Republicans' game is always underdog, right? It's always embittered, picked on little guy who's fighting the upward battle against the elites. But it's been thoroughly hollowed out because they, like you said, control every branch. They control
Yep.
every branch. And not only that, but they've just armed tens of thousands of masked goons and let them free in our streets to coerce us with violence. Like, this is the illusion that they have no power, that they are fighting back against the elite cabal of you and me, Bobby, that is just the most asinine bullshit I've ever heard. And meanwhile, Trump is building a ballroom. Our TSA folks, our air traffic controllers can't get paid, and he will not even promise back pay, yet he's forcing them to show up to work for free. You know who works for free, Bobby, right? Like,
who's that?
Slaves. That's who works for free. And this is the country he's building while he builds his ballroom.
So
grotesque.
A couple of notes I want to follow up on. Number one, seeing in the comments, some of these cats are saying, well, the military is aligned with Trump, they shouldn't get paid. Okay, let me address this.
Yes,
and you can so tell that it's people who have not put on the uniform. The military is not aligned with anybody. Okay. Nope. They are given lawful orders, they execute. The politicians that you, the civilian public, elect, we follow those orders. And unless they're unlawful or deemed unlawful, the military will follow them. This is why the first thing Trump did when he came into office was to literally fire the JAGs who would say no to the stuff that he wants. Okay. The legal authority. Stop blaming the goddamn military for following this stuff, people.
Right.
I'm sick and tired of this blasphemous bullshit. And I'm going to go off on y'all because y'all obviously don't understand how the military works. We do what y'all tell us to do. If you pick a tyrant, then guess what? All of a sudden, it's up to the officers to stand up and stop them. Okay? Period. Full stop. So these people who are not getting paid are not aligned and Trump and they deserve it. Bullshit.
Yeah.
Let me get y'all straight on that. Right here, right now. Okay? If y'all don't like it, put people in office to include the president and congressional members that are fine. Because here's the thing, 70% of y'all vote for your guy to go back to Congress, even though over 80% thinks Congress sucks as a whole. Do the math. Do the math.
Yeah.
So I'm tired of people blaming the military. And so, okay, who deems an order to be unlawful? The military, JAGs, freaking international courts of law, the Attorney General of the United States if it's domestic, the people that y'all elect and put in power. Because let me tell you something. Give you a perfect example. When the United States desegregated their schools, and in 1954 they had to send a National Guard into Arkansas, do you think everybody wanted to follow that law and that rule and the military go down there? Hell no. But it was a lawful order, and they did it, which was unpopular at the time. You guys don't get to pick and choose when this is a thing. Stop blaming the military, blame yourselves, because we put this person in office as a collective. God, that's a pet peeve of mine.
Look, I think it's part of a trend, right? That the wealthy oligarchs, the tech bros, all of these people are spending billions of dollars to enact laws and legislation that leave us worse off, and then they blame poor people and people of color and trans people and the military, the people who volunteer. Like, if they convince anyone that poor people are to blame for our problems, you have your priorities messed up, right?
It's the same mentality.
Blame the powerless for the powerful. It's wild. It's a wild thing that they've done.
Listen, look, the fact that the military is even put in this position is a failure of civilian leadership. Let me say that very, very succinctly once again. He put the military in this position where all of a sudden y'all are looking at the military, the uniform people like, what y'all gonna do? And these generals, admirals, sergeant majors and stuff looking around like, why are y'all looking at us? This has never happened before. And then everybody's like, military needs to. No. Y'all, you, the people, as in we, the people, need to get off your collective asses. Tell your congressman this is ridiculous, and so they feel the pressure. This is not about whether or not our military is going to do right, this and the other. Trust me, if it comes down to it, American military turning weapons and shooting American citizens, We're going to probably say no. Matter of fact, I'm telling you, generals and admirals ain't going to do it. Hell, you know why? Because in 2017, in the first administration, Trump wanted them to do it, and Milley said no. So stop coming after the military. We said no. What have y'all done? You, in the time, reelected this clown to office. Okay? Military has been tested on whether or not we are going to protect the Constitution and American citizens. What I'm asking you as American citizens, what are y'all willing to do?
That's
we were tested. We could have, like when they were in DC during the Black Lives Movement, and that man said cross the street, and he took General Milley and all of them over there, and he wanted them to turn weapons and just shoot them in the kneecap and stuff. He said no. Mark Esper said no. Who was the damn Secretary of Defense at the time? They all said no. I mean, I'm concerned. The unlawful orders. Yeah, we stopped unlawful orders from happening. I was in uniform at the time. I called my parents and said, we're not going. I was in command. I could have ordered my unit to DC. We said no. This is why I'm fired up about this. Stop blaming us, or stop waiting for us to rescue you.
Look, that's it. I mean, I think everyone, me included, I'm guilty of this too. We all say, who's going to stand up for us? We're looking for a Democratic leader who's strong enough to lead us all out of this thing. We are the change that we're looking for, right?
Yes.
We are the ones who have to do this work. We have to show up. We have no kings on Saturday. I know it's just a protest, but there's power and there's inspiration. And when you go there, you realize where that power really lies. It's not in hoping some poor enlisted guy is going to come rescue you and save the day. And you're not relying on, Hakeem Jeffries every single day.
No,
we vote for Hakeem Jeffries. Like we're the ones.
Well, it's funny, Sam, it's funny you say we are the ones. The biggest deterrent to ICE being effective have been American civilians, the American people. So you're showing me, at least, that you have the capability to do this. See, here's the thing. The American military, like I said, in 2017, that first administration said no to Trump. And because of that, you see ICE becoming a paramilitary organization, because he realizes the military is too hard to crack. Now, that doesn't mean they're not trying. That's why Hegseth had this little rally in Quantico, and they're firing people. They're trying to eat at the core and the soul of the American military, who they know is not calibrated to go against their own citizens. So they're going to keep trying and keep working. That's a long-term project. But immediately they passed $185 billion to ICE, right? And then gave them all the military looking gear and the masks and stuff to look all physical and tough, paramilitary, because they can't break the military, the actual United States military. So they're creating their own paramilitary force and plussing them up, right? That's why that's happening. So as you guys are looking and saying the military, no, ICE, baby. That's what's happening. They're trying to create the military in a separate organization with people who are not trained to do what they're doing. That's why they're offering all the bonus money and all this sign-on money for people who have not been indoctrinated in what the Constitution means and trained to actually defend it like the military. They're trying to get all the lethality, the word they like to use, without the restraints and constraints and the respect that the Constitution of the United States actually has, which the military acts on. That's why this is happening. I need y'all to look at things with the third eye. That's what because right now we're falling for the okie doke, right? We're like, the military's doing this. No. What is your congressman doing? What did they stand? What did they vote? Do you know what your congressman voted for and why? A good one has it all on their website. Go look at the Republicans that voted for that one big beautiful bill that created that $158 billion boondoggle for ICE. A lot of them have no reason why they voted for it. Go look. I've looked. And see, this is what I mean by doing your due diligence. This is not something where we can just sit back and say we're being taken over. No, we're allowing it due to lack of interest and lack of research and lack of paying attention. Attention to detail with your government matters, people. It matters.
It matters. It
I
absolutely, it
and
absolutely matters.
I'm sorry that I went on the
But
rant, but I'm just like,
I want
this is
to.
ridiculous.
There is this question, and I want to get to it. I know we're it's going to be a shorter show tonight, guys, because the Dan Barkov interview, his audio was a little low, so we're going to try to fix that and
Yep.
run the interview in another post tomorrow. But in any case, there's a lot to talk about, Bobby, and every time we're on together, somebody in the chats asks some question kind of framed around what you've been talking about, which is,
Hmm.
why doesn't the military rise up against this, and so on and so forth. And before, we, you know, I understand what you're saying, but I think I
Right.
also understand that impulse because um, what's happening is, as you said, ICE is becoming its own militarized force. It's
Hmm.
becoming its own wildly funded military force, right? And that's
Hmm.
if you think about people who don't have to identify themselves with serious weaponry,
Hmm.
uh, picking you off the ground and stuffing you into a van and driving off and never knowing where you're going to end up. It's hard
Hmm.
to imagine our vote doing much to absolve that, right? So I can understand the impulse to say, well, we need another military that's on our side
Hmm.
to counter that particular military. And I want to I think it's wildly unlikely that there would be something like a coup in the United States because we have such a professionalized military force
Right.
with a deep disciplined history. But
Hmm.
I want you to talk through that just a little bit.
Hmm.
I want
Hmm.
your hot take on why you think or don't think there would be any cause for coup
Right.
in its
So
final form.
a couple of things. Number one, let me, and I'm going to address both. I'm going to address that with this. We do have local people that are stopping the ICE thing. There have been clips that have now risen of local law enforcement telling ICE officials, "We will arrest you if you go bother those people or run through that crowd." Blah blah. They know, and it's going to be interesting because, as I said last week, this is becoming more of a thing where ICE thinks that the local law enforcement is there to support, and they're over there trying to protect people who have nothing to do with whatever they're doing from getting in the way. And there have been some rogue ICE agents that have jumped up and tried to do that. Nah, bro,
Sorry, I had to put that in.
I tried it locally once and down here. It's crazy. But I'm in a red area. But that's neither here nor there. But here's the thing. No, I don't believe that the American military will cause a coup. So when you look at the world, like since America became a thing, like every major power, with the exception of the United Kingdom, for really speaking, has had some type of usurping of authority. France had it, Mexico had it. I mean, you talk about our hemisphere, you talk about abroad.
Yep.
And the reason for that is they were derivatives of that singular person in charge mentality. And it spread with the European colonies, and especially into Asia and Africa, where they mimicked the systems of their rulers, right?
Sure.
America from day one was like the whole reason that we're trying to start this separate countries because we don't believe in that. That's ridiculous. The "we the people" mantra does not mean you the king, right? And so when Washington surrendered his sword in Annapolis after the war, after the American Revolution, it was the most symbolic thing anybody in that time period had ever seen. As a matter of fact, the French went on record and said, let me get this straight. This man beats the preeminent military power of the world and willingly gives up power to go back to his farm. From that day, the military became separate from the political body of our country. And so it's in our DNA not to do that. We think about this. We had elections in 1864, the middle of the damn Civil War. We had elections in 1940, 1944, in the middle of World War II. We believe so soundly in that process that even the greatest conflict in the history of mankind would not stop the democratic process from happening. I mean, Israel and Ukraine have suspended their elections because of the wars that they're in.
Right.
Right? Not us. Not us. Like clockwork, every 4 years a national election, like every 2 years a national election. I mean, we just don't do that. It's about understanding that the process that the Constitution represents is greater than you. Period. Which is why both sides historically, both political parties, as they evolved and changed, both sides recognize why it's key to keep the military apolitical, because at the end of the day, you want the most professional military you can have because of whatever crisis that may arise, right? Those that were smart enough knew that. Unfortunately, for the first time in our history, and I mean the first time in our history, and we have had presidents on various competency levels, various intelligence levels, etc., different political ideologies. We know this. But this is the first president we ever had that referred to the military as my military,
Right.
my army, my generals, and says it like it's nothing. During his first term, that jumped out at me so loudly that he said my. And I was like, again, still in uniform. What do you mean my? Who are you? My. The same guy that dodged the draft 5 times said my military, right? So if you don't think today's admirals and generals, whether they're right-leaning, left-leaning, personally, are not aware of what is happening and the tipping point for this thing called America is, and ironically, in the 250th anniversary of the foundings of the Army, Navy, and the Marines, you were sorely mistaken. That is why they did not say a damn word in Quantico when they were all called there.
Right.
That's why. That's why.
Right.
They understand the moment. So I'm not concerned necessarily about a military coup. What I am concerned about is the slow poisoning of that military mindset of being apolitical, which is why Hegseth is doing the stuff that he's doing to the force. And he's starting with the cradle of that mindset, the service academies, you know, my alma mater, Annapolis, West Point, Colorado Springs. They're purposely trying to find people that they can put into that system that are already leaning towards their ideology. And to do that, and this is the funny thing, they're lowering the standard.
Right.
They're lowering the standard to do it, coming up with alternative tests that help you get in. All this. Currently, the United States Naval Academy is the #1 public university in America. But now that you're cutting the staff and all that kind of stuff and reducing the thought process there, that's the long-term goal. But again, go look at Project 2025. This is no surprise. So I don't think that it's going to happen anytime soon. But if this continues, say in 10, 12, 13, 14 years, where you have this poison that's growing within the ranks, which we've already tried to prune in many respects, who knows what can happen? But you have to stay vigilant on that. But like I said, the military, even when Trump's first term, and let me just put it this way, do you see any places where the military shot and killed American citizens, even in his first term? No. So again, stop blaming us, start looking in the mirror, and go call your representative. That's what I'm saying.
Well, I'm gonna put that up right here. There's
there.
The numbers you need.
I mean, if y'all want to, if you want to impress me, believe me, my representative knows who I am. It's like if you want to impress me, call that. They'll go to the switchboard and they can say this, that, and the other. Someone asked, can they walk off the job? Well, the American military cannot walk off the job. They will be absent without leave. And then after 30 days or 60 days, I can't remember, you're in deserter status, which means you will be arrested, put in jail, and God knows what else. In a time of war, you can be killed for doing that. Now, government employees, I'm sure they could quit and there'll be minimal repercussions, except the fact that all that time that you served prior to towards maybe getting a pension and stuff goes out the window. But here's the thing, you're going to have people based on what Trump is saying who are going to be fired, and it's going to happen to them anyway. If you remember, there were people, they offered an early retirement, early get out when they first came in office, when Doge was still a thing. Those people, there were some people that took up that offer and actually looked like they got ahead because they got paid all the money that they were given to separate for growing all their years of seniority. But the hollowing out of the administrative state is by design, so those people can go away and you can replace those professionals with hacks, political hacks who don't know anything.
And speaking of hacks, let's move on to the GOP chat.
Yeah.
The young
Yep.
Republicans.
That's a great transition.
This is some hacky shit. It's really
So
awful.
Politico came out with this article today, and I read it, and it really just changed what I was going to talk about tonight. So the young Republicans, a group that has been very prominent here, especially during the rise of MAGA, especially with, Turning Point USA, Charlie Kirk's organization prior to his untimely death. Still, the young Republicans have had long tentacles. The former Speaker of the House, Paul Ryan, was one of the first young Republicans to establish something up there in Wisconsin, all this significant power. Well, the Republicans, the young Republicans, behind closed doors, have shown just how absolutely ridiculous their mindset is when no one's watching. The racism, the sexism, the anti-Semitism, it is all there. And we're talking about leadership of these organizations. And if you scroll and you look at this article and look at the pictures of the people saying this, you would think it's a practical joke, because the way they're so judgmental on everybody. And then you look at them. And again, I'm not one to body shame. I'm not one to do this. But dude, if you're going to be talking this smack about other people and how they look and how they appear, Lord Jesus, man, it's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. They have a stereotypical look to them, where someone like you, Sam, or someone like me, or many people on this chat would intimidate the hell out of them if they had to deal with us straight up. And you have to ask yourself, where does this come from, especially at such a young age? We're talking 19, 20, 23, 24-year-olds who, work on campaigns for candidates. And now, since this article is dropped, and it dropped just today, right? You have many Republican congressmen, state level Republicans who have these people working on their campaigns, having to kick them off their campaigns, having to disavow them, etc. To include Elise Stefanik, who's a representative of this woman. She's got some stories. But I mean, she had a couple of them working for him. I mean, it is a great, unbelievable. I mean, look, this is the guy talking smack about black people's appearances and stuff. I'm like, is he serious? I'm trying to be nice. This man is very aerodynamically sound, if you know what I'm saying.
Has a great cannonball,
right? So, who are you to talk about anybody and their appearance? But this is what we're dealing with.
It's, somebody in the chat said, and sorry, I'm looking off screen. I'm looking for all this stuff and looking at the chat and all this. It's somebody said, our kids' minds have been poisoned. And the sad truth is, I knew kids like this. I knew kids back when I was in middle school and high school who used racial epithets and talk shit on everyone and accept themselves. And you'd get them in the locker room and they immediately would turn wildly misogynistic and talk real nasty stuff about the women in their lives, the girls in their lives. This stuff has been happening forever and ever. The difference now is that these people are meant to be the leaders of a party, the young leaders of a political party. And you have to be better. You just have to be better if you're going to be in a leadership role. That's it.
Not only that, the same people that they're talking trash about, especially when it comes to women, they don't have the guts to even talk to in real life. It's like, they rely on the position that they get through working hard behind the scenes. And then by the time they're able to publicly talk about things, they have a title and people got to respect them and they got to be fake nice to them. And then they become confident in their twisted ideology. What's amazing to me is when you think about human intellect and when your brain and your frontal lobe and all this kind of stuff fully forms, it's right about this age. So these guys are baking this mindset in. Those guys are the same guys that will sit there and say, my wife has to look like this and have curves, and be in perfect shape, blah, blah, when he literally looks like a beach ball to put a tie on. I'm just being real. So this whole mentality of they'll be the ones to talk about, you got to pull yourself up by the bootstraps. You got to do A, B, C, and D and earn your place here in America, while they are sitting there making these demands that these people don't meet the same standards themselves. I mean, case in point, completely separate, but in the mindset of fake DEI, Barron Trump is about to get put on the board of TikTok. Okay. Barron is in college. Okay.
I mean,
TikTok is being acquired by American companies to make sure it still stays. And hey, out of all the teenage kids in the world, Barron Trump's the most qualified to be on that. Really?
really?
But we're talking about qualifications and DEI. You got Hegseth over here, who should not be Secretary of Defense. You've got Barron Trump, who, because he was born of the right family, is going to be put in a board of a multi-billion-dollar organization before he's 21. And yet they're going to talk to me and talk to you and talk to our kids about, hey, are you sure you're qualified to be here? You don't look the part. Blah, 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 blah. This is ridiculous. The hypocrisy is suffocating.
It's suffocating and it's blinding. And I think that, that certain people have said, if I see a black pilot on a plane, I'm gonna be worried. But this is the thing. Black pilots on plane, you never lowered the standards of what it meant to be a pilot.
Nope.
Right? You just looked for somebody who was non-white. That's it. And you look for somebody who's non-white, you kept those standards, and you still achieve those standards. What they're doing now is lowering the standards because these white people are so mediocre that they can't do the work.
Look,
and it is so frustrating to me. If you want to, if you hate DEI, then just be better.
Well, and that's the point, right? The thing is, if you are a black pilot, and I grew up with one, to get to that point, you have to be exceptional because you were chronically overlooked or not presented opportunity. So you got to kick in the door and make the opportunity, then not just meet the standard, but excel the standard. So there's no doubt that you're supposed to be in that seat. That's the reality. What we're dealing with now is the mediocrity of a man that I'm going to just, like I said, Hegseth is my personal chew toy. A man that failed to reach the milestones of his military career. A man that sat there and cheated on wife after wife after wife, beat a couple of them, sat there and failed two nonprofit organizations to supposedly help military. And how is he rewarded? Here's a spot on Fox News. Because you're awesome. You look the part. You're the all-American guy from high school. Meanwhile, the high school sweetheart, long gone. Second wife, long gone. Third wife, here right now. Who knows what can happen next year? Who knows, right? And then got the nerve and audacity to sit there and look at a Charles Q. Brown, who's chairman of the Joint Chiefs Staff, a black fighter pilot, and be like, yeah, you shouldn't be here. So I try my best to be civil when it comes to this stuff. And I try not to put myself in this mentality where you're upset because it affects you. No, it affects anybody that is trying to do right and meet the requirements to get there. And to see someone get rocketed to the front because they were born to the right family or they are liked by the right people, that is the most anti-American thing ever. And for it to be passed off as the height of Americanism is the biggest lie I've heard in my entire lifetime. And that's what this is. Yeah. That's what this is.
This whole idea that, they're like, well, you can't use race in hiring. Well, guess that race is the only thing that's been used in hiring for 400 years.
And that is the part that no one wants to talk about. Think about it like this. If you allow, using the Tuskegee Airmen as an example, guys that were ridiculously overqualified to become pilots, and then they perform at the highest level in the hardest and most ridiculous combat the world has ever seen, right? And these are the ones that make it through and they perform. Now you've got to logically ask yourself this question. If these were the ones that we finally allowed to perform and they set records and they changed aviation, what else have we denied as far as progressing something because we just didn't want those people involved, right? or cryptology and the Native Americans that did what they did in World War II, the Windtalkers, all this. If you have these people that were denied opportunity, just imagine if they had the run of the place like anybody else. We may not even had a World War II. Who knows what we could have invented? Who knows what could have happened when each person that was able to had a free, equitable chance to do it. But now, because you want to purposely look for people that you know you have systemically denied, that's a problem. It makes no logical, scholastic sense whatsoever. It just doesn't. It doesn't. But what's happening is competition is fierce when you open it up. And that stereotype of the all-American white kid from middle America is getting his ass kicked.
Yeah.
By the short-haired lesbian chick from New York, or the black guy from freaking Atlanta, or the freaking freaking trans member from freaking LA. And you don't like
or
it. Or
disabled people, as Christine said.
I was literally, and that was my next thing. Or a dude doing it and has one leg, or is on the spectrum, but still outperforming your ass. You don't like it. But it's amazing. We accept this in sports. It's all about the best, period. We've gotten to that point where, like, hey, I don't care if this person can't do this, looks this way. Can they throw this ball fast? Can they move fast?
Right.
We accept it. And then if they're playing for your team, you root for them. You're defensive, right? But
unless
oh boy.
they take a knee.
Well, yeah. I mean, yeah. Right. But this is where we are in America. We say we're all about excellence, but yet at the same time, we are currently creating a system that rewards mediocrity and enhances appearance over substance and trying to pass it off as strength. The whole Mar-a-Lago face thing that has taken over, where you see conservative women injecting all this stuff and putting in these extensions, looking Christy Gnomes. People, look, if you want to have fun going down a rabbit hole, look up Christy Gnome's pictures and her evolution of appearance. Look up the press secretary, what's her name? Look at her evolution of appearance.
Yeah, Levitt.
Look at Pam Bondi's evolution of appearance, and just go back 10 years. That's all you got to do. Go back 10 years when Trump came down the escalator and see how all these people, Kim Guilfoyle, who they shipped off to Greece, I think, as an ambassador, just take a look at their physical appearance and why it's all similar. There have been articles written about this because it hammers home that appearance is all that matters. It's not about the substance. And that should terrify everybody in the world, because if America is calling the shots, and now you know the shots are being called by really lackluster, non-credible people.
Yes.
That ripple wave is felt all across the globe.
It is. And it, you know, I'll go back to something you said, I think about this a lot, what we missed out on.
Yes.
And you know why people who look like me are getting their asses kicked? Because we built a system where people who don't look like us had to work really hard to get the tiniest scrap. And so they got really good, really good. And I just imagine a world. I mean, this is a little silly, and I'm going to say this, and I'm being a little embarrassed about it, but I have 2 daughters, and, you know, my wife and I are of a certain age. We were coming up in high school and college when Lilith Fair came out, and there's this documentary on Lilith Fair. And back in the day, like, you know, I never went, but I had girlfriends who did and friends who did and all this kind of thing. And, you know, you probably didn't go, Bobby, but, you know, and there were jokes about it back in the day and all this kind of thing. But this documentary kind of broke my heart because it was a concert. It was, you know, a festival run totally by women and all women artists. You know what didn't happen at those festivals? Sexual assault. Nobody got their asses kicked. There was no crime. It was a lot of happy, really joyful people watching music and enjoying each other's company and feeling good feelings and all those kinds of things. Nobody was getting all drunk and fighting. Like this is a world that we, you know, I know it's again, a little embarrassing to admit how touched I was at the Lilith Fair documentary, but Think about that. If the world wasn't just run by these GOP young Republican dipshits,
Yeah,
right? We could have
yeah,
nice things. We could
yeah.
have nice lives. We wouldn't have ice in the streets. That's number one.
Right. Well, part of what's so scary about that chat, the political chat that they're talking about, is the absolute absence of empathy. I mean,
Yeah.
geez. It is like we will feel sorry for nobody. We will eat our young if necessary. We talking about gas chambers and Hitler and this. I'm like, this is America, and this is the young people. The people who are
Yeah.
supposed to be the most optimistic. The
That,
people who are supposed to have these dreams. It is absolutely terrifying. I
it
mean,
is.
people, Google this article. Look at these chats. I was just like, this cannot be. And then when I realized not only is it true, but they are plugged into the political system, right? Where they can spread all the hate and all the discomfort and all of the terror and think it's a sport, like something out of the Hunger Games, right?
Yeah.
That should terrify everybody, because that is the next generation. That is the generation that is about to take over after our generation takes over from the baby boomers, if they ever relinquish power, which, could or could
I have
not
my
happen. I don't
doubts.
know. Yeah, well,
My
me too.
God.
Me
But
too. But that's where we are, people.
that's it.
Jeez. God.
Bobby, we're running a little low on time, but I really want to get your thoughts on Gaza and this. I mean, I still want to call it a potential
Yes.
peace, because again, nobody is operating in good faith, it seems. So I know we don't have too much time, and this is a big issue. Maybe we can cover it a little more detail.
No. Well, I can summarize it real quick. Real quick though, I saw a couple of comments. Patrick asked, "Were there any women in those chats?" Yes, Patrick, there were. Definitely read the article. You will be shocked. And then I saw Jill B and Janet talk about
Jill B and Janet are on a tear right now, by the way.
talking about Pam Bondi lost weight, this, that, and the other, but that mindset of having to look that way, it's pervasive. It's significant. Now about Gaza, I'm going to say congratulations for phase 1 completion. That includes President Donald John Trump. He is part of that process. Whether it's for ego, whether I call a spade a spade. This right here is significant if it holds. Now, that being said, he's in the limelight, signing his little thing and showing everything. It doesn't matter what he thinks, to be completely honest. It matters what Israel and Hamas think. And to be honest, Qatar and Egypt have more say so on this thing holding together than the United States, because the negotiations, the advancements, the assurances did not come from the United States. It came from Qatar, Egypt, Jordan, all those countries in the region. Now, they wanted Hamas to completely de-arm themselves. Hamas was like, hell no. And everybody's like, okay, goodbye. But even after the first day, we're seeing some issues. For example, the aid that was supposed to be promised into Gaza has been cut in half by the Israeli military already. Now, they're saying that's because Hamas did not move back to where they were supposed to, or this, that, and the other. Inconsequential, the aid needs to get there now. Yeah. That was the priority of all of this. Now, the hostages have been released. Deceased hostages remains are en route as we speak. These are all positives. But you are tempting fate when you are going after the aid. That is the lifeblood of this peace agreement. Getting food, getting medical supplies into Gaza where people can access it. Okay? That is important. That is key. That is pivotal.
But Bobby, this sounds this is the off ramp you always talk about. You have to
this is the off ramp.
A population off ramp.
Right. And my question, and here's some things that go beyond what we're talking about. Long term, what does this agreement look like? Right? Borders, governance, and then here's something that no one's talking about. Netanyahu suspended elections while this war was going on. Prior to October 7th, He was being investigated and was possibly going to be impeached and removed from office based to him and his party malfeasance, some bad stuff politically. Then the war broke out. He suspended elections. And then, the country rallied behind him initially and then started to rally against him. Let's see if Israel announces elections. Let's see when Netanyahu says he's willing to go through the legal process that he was supposed to be a part of. Because here's the thing. The Israeli people have not forgotten. They have not forgotten. They've already started talking about it. So what does that mean? The hostages come home, a restoration of some sort of peace. But where does that leave Benjamin Netanyahu, a man who for 30 years pushed to obliterate Gaza and all of that? And he's gotten his wish, basically. So now what? Now what? Who succeeds him, if anybody?
And I mean, that's the big question. He said, we'll get back to, investigations and all this stuff once this war is over. Well, the war's over. So I'm curious, and I agree. I think you can be unequivocal in saying that it is incredible that the hostages are home, no matter what side they're on, to get your child or your husband or your wife home after that long is an incredible thing. It really is. But you're right. There's an incredible amount of work to do, and for any credit that we want to give Trump. Or don't want to give Trump, but should.
Right. Well, and make no mistake. I'm going to. I think the world should pause and say and just have a brief moment to breathe and say, I'm glad that peace is there, that children are not going to be terrorized, etc. However, unfortunately, my entire adult life was calibrated to think about worst case scenario.
Sure.
The temporary peace means nothing if there's no strategic long-term vision here. And I haven't seen all the data from or everything that was signed. I've not heard the long-term projections, but I am concerned that we are just looking at the flash in the pan moment. And then 6 months from now, things are diabolical yet again over there.
I mean, I do want to run. Well, I'll just read it. SAS writer says, Trump gets no credit. Bullshit. This could have happened last year. Yes.
Also true.
Very quickly. He stopped it and increased funding to kill Gazans. Yes. Trump doesn't want a two-state solution. Nope. Neither does Netanyahu. They'll probably treat Palestinians like China imprisons the Uyghurs. And look, I think that, the Uyghurs are some of the most oppressed people on
Earth.
On Earth. And I think there's a lot there. I think it's really, early for any kind of celebrating, except for the tangible and concrete achievements of what's actually happened. I think that's a great point.
That tangible piece is such a big deal. It's such a big deal because right now, if you ask the average Palestinian, what do you think your future looks like? What do you think your hope is moving forward? It's a different answer now than it was last week. But I'm not sitting there saying that it's positive. They're like, at least I'm living today. I've seen these interviews. The question that you asked the Israelis is the same question. I don't know if they think the future is so bright. They don't know who their leader is going to be. They don't know what this new situation is going to look like. They know that they've created a generation of Palestinians that will hate them to their core because of what has happened. They understand that. And damn it, I just don't think that's a way to live, period.
No, look, we talked about it, I think last week, and then I'll give you the last word, but we talked about who rebuilt Japan after the war, who rebuilt Germany after the war. And why did we do that? Because we understood the devastation that they felt. And we understood it doesn't matter who caused any of that devastation. If the Japanese in Pearl Harbor or the Germans in Blitzkrieg, it doesn't matter. If you want to stop it the next time, then you got to put these pieces back together. And I'm not sure that the vision is there from either side.
Let me tell you something.
Meaning the Americans or the Israelis.
America won the world over right after World War II with Coca-Cola and Hershey
Yeah.
chocolate bars.
Yep.
That is what really established the new world order that we have enjoyed for 80 years almost. That it wasn't the wanton destruction, it was the rebuilding effort. You know what I'm
Yes.
saying? And it's so funny that that generation of Americans understood that, damn it, we just can't keep fighting. There won't be anybody left. And that's what they did. So we have the lessons learned. The question is, are we willing to listen to them? That's the question. I don't know. I don't know.
I don't either. Well, Bobby, that's a good place to start. So much for our short episode tonight. Uh,
We're sorry, people. We're sorry.
oh, hold on, I'm going to remove that and put that in. We have no Kings coming up this weekend. I hope everyone goes and attends. And if you do, and you feel comfortable with it, we at Lincoln Square would love to see your pics, your pictures. You can email them to us. You can put them in the chat on Lincoln Square. I would love personally to run some on this show next week. If you're comfortable with it and you want to share, they're just so inspiring, those protests. And seeing your images really, I think, makes a difference to the little community we're building here. So that's my pitch for No Kings. And also, guys, everyone, the chat doesn't get any better. You guys are the best audience in the business. I'm convinced. The best audience on Substack. And me and Bobby, it's like we're talking to each other, and then we're talking to the chat, and then makes me so happy. I love it. Bobby,
thank you guys. No, I just want to thank you guys for your diligence and your consistency. And then I want to thank Sam for putting all this together and make it seem seamless, because I just push buttons every now and then. So it's like, but no, it's a conversation that I think America needs to return to, having a civic space where you can discuss the actions of your leaders and what that means to you and everybody else. It's that simple. So we'll continue to do that for as long as we can do that. And we really appreciate your support.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next time.
Thanks, guys.